Hey, everybody. Good morning. It's Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. It is the 23rd of September, 2019. Welcome to Resistance Live. Thanks again to all of you who bore with me last week when I was traveling. Those of you who follow on Twitter know that while I can't talk exactly about the project that I am working on just yet, I know that a lot of you have been interested in it. What I can tell you is that I am adding documentary film production to the list of many, many things that I do. So, part of what I was doing last week was for a forthcoming project. And as soon as I can tell you anything more about it than that, I will be sure to do so. Okay. I also just want to mention briefly just the series of events that I was discussing yesterday on Twitter. Just a quick note to all of you, because many of you expressed some very kind and generous support, which I just really want to acknowledge and appreciate. I am. I don't know how to put it. It's a little bit of a rough morning here. Sorry, guys. It's I obviously it's a very serious step to have to file a criminal complaint against someone for stalking and harassment. Particularly in light of the circumstances related to my address and my children. And so, it's not at all easy to be in a place of having to do that, let alone having to do that with disgruntled former viewers of the broadcast who now have decided to kind of destroy my life and expose my address and, risk the lives of me and my children. So I'm just grateful that, California has very serious anti-stalking and anti-harassment laws, including for cyber harassment. And I'm just going to have to follow the criminal justice process through that. Thankfully, Twitter finally took action last night after hundreds of reported tweets over the course of about 5 months. So in any event, appreciate all the words of support. One of the more disappointing things to discover, because I've actually had this person blocked for quite some time. Although there have been, there's been some monitoring going on of what this person has been doing, because I personally was just being actually made physically ill by reading what this person was posting about me. One of the things that is a little bit distressing about all of this is that I did learn that there are some regular followers of this broadcast who have actually been assisting this person in trying to track down personal information on me and expose my home address, and therefore expose my children and myself to violence or threats of violence. And so, look, I don't want to spend too much time on this, because there's so many other things happening in the world that are really significant that we need to talk about. I just want to say this. It's really important that, we all remember that whomever we are disagreeing with at the moment is still a human being. And that, one of the things that in the conversations I had last week, many of you know that I was with LaTosha Brown in Boston on Friday. One of the things that's really key to where we find ourselves right now is that we're living in an environment which doesn't cultivate compassion in any way, shape, or form. If you find yourself mad at me, or you don't like what I'm saying, or you disagree with me in some way, shape, or form, as with everyone else, please remember that I'm a person and I have 2 little kids, and, setting out on plots to attack me, or assisting randos on Twitter who you don't know, who, by the way, have long histories of doing this kind of stuff. There's some things we found out about this particular person that are really quite frightening. You're doing a disservice to everyone, and you're especially doing a disservice to all the energy that we need to be putting into fighting back. Please remember that at the end of the day, I'm still a single mom with 2 little kids, and I've been here from the beginning because I felt like it mattered, and not because I wanted to expose my family to any threat of violence, or to expose my kids to it. And the things that I've had to do in the last 24 hours in order to try to keep our family safe have been things that I never thought I would have to resort to, including talking to people at my kids' school, and the police department and the court system. So it's really just important to remember that even in this environment, the people who you disagree with are still human beings, and there are certain standards and lines that just should not be crossed. So I just, want to say that, and I want to thank all of you very much for your support. I will tell you all that, if there's been this is one of the reasons, and I'll just say this as a point of explanation. There are some of you on here who have ended up in one of our mass blocks at certain points on Twitter. There are reasons why we don't reverse any of those decisions. And one of them has to do with the fact that we've been dealing with this for 5 months. And this is not the first time that something like this has happened, but it is by far the worst. This is a situation where we're dealing with someone who's very unstable, and, we can't unblock people without knowing who they are and what their background is and everything else having to do with it, or we're potentially risking my security, the security of my team, the security of my family. So, we're doing everything that we have been advised to do here. And hopefully we won't have to do any more of it going forward. So that's that. But anyway, I just wanted to say a quick little thank you to all those of you who were so kind with your statements of support yesterday. And that's it. I'm not gonna, I said on Twitter last night, I'm not good at vulnerability, and that's all very true. This has been a very hard couple of days, and I should probably just leave it at that. All right. So I want to talk about Greta Thunberg, who's at the UN this morning. She has given a speech this morning that I very much recommend that you go and watch. It's hard to watch it without crying, but it's really important that you watch it. Her statements about her future being stolen and her childhood being stolen, and the nature of the lies and the ignorance that's being perpetrated by those who are denying climate change is really powerful. And I want to encourage you all to kind of to go check it out. She's also been shot standing behind the president and the vice president this morning at the UN, and it's really critical at this point that we all keep an eye on what's happening there. But there's a picture of her with her arms crossed, like standing there behind Pence and Trump. That's kind of iconic in its own way. But her speech is really incredible, and I encourage you all to go watch it. I want to thank all of you who turned out for the climate strike on Friday. I know that that was an enormous event that got a lot of coverage. Obviously grateful to all of you who have put in your efforts here to support your children, if your children have been involved in that, because it's really critical and key. Okay. On the front of 2020, we've had a few really significant developments in the last 48 hours. So Warren has surged ahead in the polls in Iowa. This is a very big deal because at the moment she is neck and neck with Biden. It's within the margin of error, but at this moment in time, they're basically tied. Sanders has fallen way back. This bodes very well for Warren's candidacy. You all know that I'm in for Warren 2020. Want to encourage all of you to kind of keep an eye on that because it's a sign of what's to come. Cory Booker, on the other hand, has done something very unconventional and revealed over the weekend that he is falling short of the fundraising requirements needed to keep him in the race. So I just want to say one thing about that. It's totally fine to donate money to other candidates that may not be your first choice, but that are very valuable voices to have in the race. And Cory Booker is one of them. I followed Cory Booker from way back when he was like the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and have always been very impressed with a number of his stances on really critical and important issues. And I do think there's a huge value to having him on the debate stage and in this race for as long as possible. He's been very transparent about where they are. And I think that's a new marker for what we would want to see from candidates. So if you got a few extra bucks to kick around, throw him Cory Booker's way. Because I would like to see him stick around until the last stages of this race, frankly. I think we need his voice. All right. The other big development is that Bill Weld this morning, who, as you all may remember, is running against Trump for the Republican nomination, called out Trump for committing treason and said that he believes that in exchange for not being executed for treason, the president should step down. Anand Giahardas made the point this morning that this is a real movement in the Overton window. I agree. We haven't seen a Republican candidate, let alone any Republican, let alone any Democrat, note the fact that the president can be executed for treason. He can be. One of the penalties for treason is death. It's within the realm of possibility. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily the route we want to go here, but it certainly was an interesting move on his part, and certainly one that kind of shifts the conversation quite a bit from the standpoint of the Republican side of the fence. As well, there is a little bit of news on the on the development of what I am hearing from folks who are calling their Republican senators this morning. I've heard this from several of you, including one of you on the comment feed, that the feedback you are getting when you are making phone calls right now to red senators' offices has shifted. There is very plainly an awareness that where we are right now, and we're going to talk about the whole whistleblower situation and what's developed in the last little while in a minute, but there is very plainly an understanding from the Republican side of the fence that we have entered a very dangerous new set of territories here with regard to this president. So that's my way of saying, please remember to call everybody, not just, blue reps, not just Nancy Pelosi, not just Jerry Nadler. Please call, if you are in a red state with red Republicans or a red representative, it's really incredibly important that you make those phone calls today. And you can do it from a standpoint that isn't like screaming mad. You can do it from a standpoint, as one of our supporters did this morning, from the standpoint of, I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about the president auctioning off the 2020 election, basically, through a tactic of denying aid to Ukraine. And what are you planning on doing about it? That's another approach. It doesn't have to be like screaming for impeachment. It can be an effort to kind of really advocate. So, again, some importance there of talking about that. All right. So let's just talk for a second about where we are on the whistleblower complaint in general. All right. So one of the things that happened, the news about this broke very fast and furious over the weekend. Where we are now is that we know that the president, at least 8 times in one phone call, and this is only one instance that is apparently the topic of the whistleblower complaint. There's quite a bit more in there. Advocated for Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. And withheld aid to Ukraine that had been approved by the Congress as an extortionate tactic to get them to dig up dirt, non-existent dirt, maybe even fabricate stories on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's relationship with Ukraine. One of the things that I just want to make very clear about this is that there has been a big effort by the right wing to change the narrative of this conversation to be about Biden, did he or didn't he? Okay, the focus of this particular issue needs to not be on Joe Biden. Okay, the focus of this needs to be on the fact that the president of the United States demanded that a foreign country engage in election interference in exchange for aid. That in and of itself is illegal on like so many different ways. It is also, by the way, it meets the definition of bribery under the treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors component of the Constitution for impeachment. And it is also something that is a campaign's finance violation. It arguably meets the definition of extortion. There's so many layers at which we're in the territory of impeachment with this. The biggest thing that I just want to mention here, though, is that it is an auctioning off of U.S. democracy. And the real thing here that concerns me is that, Nancy Pelosi's, we're going to wait till 2020. We're just going to vote him out. The problem is that we don't even know if the president has done this elsewhere. We don't know what else is contained in this whistleblower complaint. What we know is bad enough. And what it tells us is that our elections are not secure for 2020. And he will do whatever it takes to throw the election. He has fundamentally sold off the 2020 election in what appears to be a situation where it's to the highest bidder. Because this is not the only time he's done this. I think we can all at least make that valid assumption, right? The thing that is incredibly dangerous here is to get wrapped up in what we've already seen, like the New York Times and other outlets trying to do, which is like, did Joe Biden do anything wrong? Okay. First of all, the evidence is no. But second of all, if that's what you're talking about, you're not talking about the president's treason. And so it's really key. One of you said to me, like, can Biden sue the president? That's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is whether or not the president of the United States is auctioning off American democracy using taxpayer dollars to make sure that our elections will never be secure again. That's the issue. Now, what I can say about this is that there is a lot of folks out there, myself included, who happen to think that if we don't see articles of impeachment filed on this by the end of this week, that is going to tell us an awful lot about the future of American democracy. There is enough already in the public domain from Rudy Giuliani and others, from those who have seen the whistleblower complaint, in the context of what we already know in the public domain, to impeach this president just for this alone. We're not even including the dozens of other offenses that we know about that have been under investigation so far. Literally, we are at a breaking point right now. And if Nancy Pelosi refuses to impeach him for this, there's nothing that will get him impeached. This is grave. It is serious. It is specific. It is a new low, and it is obvious. That's the other thing about it that I just want to make really clear. We don't need an investigation to impeach the president for this conduct. We don't need it. What we know from Rudy Giuliani already is bad enough. What's contained in the whistleblower complaint will become public. It looks as though huge chunks of it have already been leaked to the press. And, the other thing I just want to mention here is that this whistleblower has risked everything. I said this on last week's Thursday broadcast, has risked everything to come forward on this, and continues to do so, and is being the complaint is being squelched by the Attorney General and by the acting DNI. That in and of itself is also a major issue at this point, that the mechanisms that are supposed to be supporting the rule of law in this country are actively working against it in this instance. That, by the way, is an indicia of guilt. Because if there wasn't a reason to cover this up, if there wasn't a reason to hide it, we would already see the complaint. So, look, I some of you ask me like, well, what do we do? What's this week going to be like? Or what, where are we? Like, tell it to me straight. So I'm just going to tell it to you straight. Like, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't impeach him, if we don't see articles of impeachment filed this week, I kind of think we're not going to be able to impeach this president, period. And I have really serious concerns about the 2020 election. Like, this is a line in the sand. It is an absolute line in the sand. And the idea that we have to wait for a certain arbitrary number of votes, or that we have to have another fucking hearing, or that we need to, write another sternly worded letter is a load of horse shit. Like, what has happened here is a line in the sand, and there have been many of them before. This one is one that cannot be crossed. Like, if we cross this, it is fundamentally an assertion, a complicity in the idea that our election security is meaningless, that American democracy doesn't deserve to be defended, and we will be in a place, frankly, where Nancy Pelosi will not be upholding her oath of office either. I will remind you all, every person who is a member of Congress, every person who is a senator swears to uphold the Constitution. The president has engaged in high crimes, treason, bribery. He needs to be impeached. This particular instance, the wholesale selling off of the American democratic process in exchange for a bribe, is a line in the sand that absolutely should not be crossed without impeachment. It's just that simple. And I'm not, I'll just tell you this, like, the best legal minds in the country, even the ones who were refusing to cross the lexicon before, are there now. Like, this is a very critical, very dangerous moment, because if he gets away with this, there's no telling what he's going to do next. And the fundamental problem here is that, as with the subpoenas, this is what I was warning you all about back in March. If you establish a precedent that you can evade a subpoena and not testify and get away with it, what happens next? More people do it, right? If this situation with Ukraine is something that the president has done and gets away with, what's to stop him from going to Russia or to China or to anyone else and saying, I'm going to give you U.S. taxpayer dollars for digging up dirt on Elizabeth Warren. I'm going to give you U.S. taxpayer dollars if you interfere with our election process and hack voting rolls. I'm going to give you U.S. taxpayer dollars if you interfere with the election security of our voting machines. At this stage of the game, it's all on the line. I wish I had more to say about it that's optimistic. What I will say at this point in the game is that the conversations that I had last week with a number of people out there on this trip that I took for this new project that I'm working on related to the fact that it may all crash and burn. I think there's a lot of folks at this point who have recognized that the unwillingness to abide by norms, the utter flouting of the rule of law, the recalcitrance of the Democratic Party to act to defend our democracy have put us in a place where this great American experiment may fail. And I know that's really scary, but I'll just add one other thing about it. At least from the standpoint of the conversations I was having last week, there are people who are prepared to figure out what's supposed to come next in this country, right? There are great thinkers out there and great lawyers and great activists and great minds who are thinking already about how would we build a new nation in the event that this entire democracy implodes. It's very frightening to be in that place. Don't get me wrong. But I will tell you that none of the norms and none of the backstops are holding right now. And if she doesn't impeach him for this, she'll impeach him for nothing. And that means the 2020 election is not safe. So, we have to kind of get prepared for that. This is one of those reasons why, from the very beginning, I've been talking about what are the things that we need to do to hold ourselves together when we live through this. This is bad. It's not just bad. It's like terrifying. And, I want you all to be in a place where, you all are thinking through how you're going to get through the next bit of this, because, this is the other thing. There's everything that's happening with Iran right now is also really scary. Troops are being sent to Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian kingdom has asked for support from the US. The president desperately wants to distract attention away from the fact that he's engaged in treasonous behavior with regard to Ukraine. It's a precipitous moment. American democracy may not make it. And if it doesn't, we're all going to have to figure out what's coming next. And we also all are going to have to be in a position to work really hard to rebuild it. One of the things that I will just mention about my conversation with Elizabeth Brown on Friday in Boston is that she made a very valid point to me. It was one I had not thought about from this perspective in quite this way. And it was this, that it doesn't take every American lining up to change the world. It doesn't take every American being on our side to build a better country. It takes a small, what she called committee of the willing, a small group of citizens who are profoundly committed to changing the country and the world for the better and to doing whatever it takes to do that. If all of our democratic institutions fail, we're going to have to write a new constitution. We're going to have to build a new government from the ground up. Countries have done this, not countries as big as the United States, as monolithic from the standpoint of world power as the United States. But there are countries that have done this like in the last 20 years. And it's going to take a committee of the willing, great minds, people really committed to creating safety for one another, to working in community, to create a better world, to make it happen. If our Senate and our Congress is no longer functional, if we have to rewrite a whole new constitution, it's going to take us doing that. And we have to be committed to the effort of that. And that means, like, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to cede responsibility to leaders who do. And if you do have a gift to offer, you're going to maximize that. You're going to go out there into the world and use that to benefit others. You know how to plant vegetables in your neighborhood to combat climate change? Go do it, right? Like, you know how to help keep people safe if they're afraid of being deported? Do it. Right? You know how to canvass your neighbors about important issues that you care about? Go do that. It's going to take all of us, but I also will remind you, we don't have to win over the people who are still behind Trump, right? We don't have to win over people who are not willing to do the right thing. A committee of the willing, she was talking to me about the civil rights movement and the fact that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. So the question is, like, are you on the committee? And if you are, you got to get prepared for the fact that it's going to be a rough ride from here on out. Because, I don't see an end game to this unless the president is impeached very, very, very soon. That bodes well for the future of American democracy. And if he's not impeached now, our ride through the 2020 election is going to be very, very rough. So, I just want you all to get ready. And, that doesn't mean you stop fighting back, but it is a recognition of where we find ourselves. It is a precipitous moment in American history right now. And, the country may not survive it if Nancy Pelosi doesn't do her job. And anybody who's telling you otherwise, including that Blake's mustache guy, you guys keep posting that thread on my feed like every day. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's a nice little antidepressant pill for the masses. Okay. Where we are right now is that the president has sold American democracy. He has sold it using taxpayer dollars. He has sold the election security of the 2020 election. At bare minimum, he has tried to sell it to Ukraine, and who knows where the hell else. There's no answer to this that ends well, that doesn't involve impeaching him right the fuck now. I wish I had better news, but that's it. And, I want you all to gird yourselves through the standpoint of what it's going to take to survive this to the end, whatever the end looks like. Because the end may not be a Democrat winning in 2020. The end may be somebody, winning the general election and him refusing to move office and to leave office. And then what happens? Or it may be mass election interference to the point where he claims a total victory because nobody has done anything to stop him. So we absolutely have to be committed in quite a number of very significant ways right now to self-investigation. Where are my efforts best used? What's my best gift that can be put forward right now to help to create the world I want to live in? And we got to go do it. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. It's why I do this every day. I don't have to do this every day. I do it every day because this is a part of my commitment to educating all of you, to motivating, to hopefully educating all of you about what's happening and to push forward toward what we need to accomplish here. All right. Okay. I want to let you all know a couple of things about the schedule for this week. This week is like one of my last big weeks of corporate training for the year in my day job. There is a possibility that there may not be a broadcast tomorrow morning, or if there is, it will be very, very early. Okay. So just know that. Please pay attention to the feed. I am on site with a corporate client in Los Angeles all day tomorrow. If I can broadcast, I will. Wednesday, the broadcast will be at the regular time. Thursday and Friday, the broadcast is going to be very early. Like we're talking like 7:30 a.m. Pacific, because I'm training all day on Thursday and Friday as well. By the end of this week, things are going to ease up, and for the rest of the year, they will be much more regular. But I just want to prepare you all that, while we're riding through this particular week, which I know is going to be a crazy week. I had said this morning on Twitter, I've got this really big impending sense of doom. Please just stick with me on the scheduling through this week, because come October 1st, we're free and clear for the rest of the year in terms of my scheduling, barring maybe one business trip I have to take for the day job. Okay. So in other words, maybe no broadcast tomorrow. If it does happen, it will be very early. Please stay tuned for that. Wednesday, the broadcast will be at regular time. Thursday and Friday, the broadcast will be very early in the morning. All right. And once again, I want to thank all of you for your support yesterday online. Again, this kind of stalking situation is very frightening for me and my family, but it does make a really big difference to hear all of you out there, in our camp and providing words of support and providing gratitude and all of that good stuff. So thank you all for that. It's not over yet. There's still a criminal prosecution to come, and there's also other aspects of the court system that are going to have to be engaged. But I'm very grateful for the support that you've all given on that front. All right. Many thanks to all of you for being here with us on Patreon. I will just let you all know, a lot of you, I know there was a huge stink about moving over onto Patreon and why. This particular situation was one of the reasons. And so I hope you all just understand, to the extent that you've been upset with Patreon's features, or it hasn't been terribly smooth for you, or you're not being able to log in live, we have to make decisions here that make sense in order to protect me and to protect my family, and also to protect what we're doing here. And I know they're not always convenient, but I want to thank you all for riding the wave with me, because sure as shit hasn't been a fun few days on that front. All right. Much love to all of you. I will talk to all of you. If tomorrow, it will be very early in the morning. If not tomorrow, Wednesday, regular time, please stay tuned to the feed for breaking news on that front. All right. Much love. Bye.